Hey everyone, I'm so glad you can join me. It's Laura from TheRealLauraB back, and this is truly the tea time. I've got Andrea Burkhart with me, who is going to help me present Rocky Brooks' deposition. This is going to be parts of his deposition, but some really juicy parts. So, hi, I'm Laura, also known as TheRealLauraB from Twitter. I'm a researcher, truth seeker, and a new wave internet journalist. I'm not a lawyer, nor offering any legal advice. Join me on a journey to draw the curtain back to expose key news developments in the world of celebrity lawsuits and current events. Let's get started. And let me bring on Andrea right away. Hey, Andrea, how are you?
Good morning.
Good morning. You're a little pixelated for me. I'm not sure if that's my side or your side.
I don't know.
Is anybody in the chat having an issue? Let me know. It could be my connection.
Yeah, you just pixelated for me.
Okay, so it's probably me. That happens a lot. So let me just bring everybody up to date real quick with what we're dealing with here. So I hate these share screens that take so ever. This is where we're at. Rocky Brooks has made dismissals. He didn't amend his claim, but he made his dismissals. Johnny and his production company are the only plaintiffs. His only complaint for damages is assault and battery, intentional infliction of emotional distress, negligence, and negligent infliction of emotional distress. So that's where we're at. Infliction of emotional distress, negligence, and negligent infliction of emotional distress. And I got a backbeat from my YouTube. Sorry about that. So this is what's happened so far. He's filed his claim. They've done discovery because this, the original trial date was October 2019. So this deposition is in September 2019. They've done their interlocutories with this is the question and answer. And through that, they found out a lot of interesting information that Rocky doesn't seem to be very hurt. He hasn't been to any doctors or anyone. So Johnny's team filed to have this reclassified as a limited civil case under $25,000 because they're like, look, he's admitted he's going for nominal damages in his claim, and he's only incurred about $800 in medical expenses that he's admitted to in those interlocutory answers. So they argued with the judge. Well, after that, Rocky decided, or his lawyers decided, gee, maybe you better go see a therapist if you're claiming mental issues. So that's what he did. So he went to see his family therapist a few times. The judge deemed, and you can explain this, that she's the legal referee, if you will, and the jury is going to have to decide these facts. And she said, at this time, I can't find that now or in the future, Rocky may not incur $25,000 in damages expenses. So I'm going to deny this. I'm not going to reclassify this as a limited case. So that's where we came on that. I don't have copies of the interlocutories. They didn't upload them, obviously. We usually only see them if they're an exhibit to a dispute or a motion. So they've done a lot of discovery. We knew about Emma Danhoff's declaration. We presented that. And now we're at good old Rocky's sit down for his deposition. What we have to present today is the deposition sections that his lawyers are objecting to, which are pretty extensive and quite comical because they certainly don't want the jury to get whiff of any of this. So as my understanding is what this deposition does, which we didn't see so much with the Depp versus Heard, is like, we object that they should be allowed to ask any of these questions at trial for the jury, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, a deposition is similar to trial questioning, but different. Because the idea is, yes, you may need to introduce parts of this deposition primarily to impeach the witness, but you have a much broader range of questions you get to ask in a deposition because the purpose is investigation. You're not actually conducting the trial when you do the deposition. You're just trying to get information that then you can follow up on. So you can ask a lot more stuff than is potentially going to end up being admissible at trial. So it's just like the trial process in the sense that at the deposition, and we saw this with Amber Heard's deposition, it's normal for the attorneys to object so that they can preserve these objections that, hey, it's not going to be relevant. Hey, that's an improper question. You know, that type of thing. And so then down the road, when they are evaluating, is any of this going to be used at trial for any purpose? Those objections then have to be dealt with.
Okay. So I know your time is limited. We're going to kind of jump in here and see what Rocky has to say about his own case. And so the first thing off the bat is late in the case, very late. A new lawyer joined, and that is Pat Harris of Beverly Hills. So I guess they brought on a trial lawyer. I don't know if you're familiar with this name.
I'm not.
But Randall Smith, who is in the same office with Camille Vasquez, is the one who conducted this deposition, and Arabella was there. Pat Harris was not there. So they presented these objections, and this happened September 13th. So it was supposed to go to trial at the end of October. So the depositions were quite late. And you're going to see a lot of, nope, sorry. Let's get back up here. These are the kind of objections. Page this, line this. A lot of the objections are left blank, but it's going to be lacks foundation, relevance, and proper legal opinion. I mean, hearsay, you're going to hear all. So these are the sections of the deposition that they've pulled out. So even though it's not the full deposition, there's still a lot of information here. Okay, so apparently Rocky Brooks, this is going to be fragmented. So it's not going to start on, it's going to just jump in on the middle of a page. And Rocky Brooks has apparently suffered a car accident since, yeah, Johnny's the movie. So he has some physical limitations that he needs to get up and move around every once in a while. So they're going to ask him, are you on any medication this morning that would affect your ability to understand the questions? He's like, no. Normally I'll ask you to go ahead and ask it now. We can discuss this. If there's any reason your deposition can't proceed today. And he's like, well, and this is Rocky. As I stated earlier, that I'm in a lot of pain from neck injuries and I'm having reoccurring symptoms. And, you know, so I'm in a little bit of pain and I haven't been sleeping well, but I didn't take any pain medication. So I should be clear today. So that kind of gives you an idea with Rocky. He's, you know,
he's a rambler.
Yeah, he is. He is.
Simple question about are you on medication gives you this long response that is not going to bode well for him in a deposition.
Yeah. So he's, you know, Randall is saying, if you need to take a break at any point, let me know. We'll let you walk around or whatever. And he goes, absolutely, definitely. And we can talk off the record about how long a break you need. He's like, okay. So Randall goes on and says, and these symptoms, the pain you described for me is attributed to spinal condition. Is that right? And Rocky says, yes, cervical and spinal. Randy says, can you give me a little more detail on that? And this is now going to be pre-injuries. Rocky says, I've had a cervical laminectomy in 2015 where the nerve canal is narrowed to the point where my feeling in my body was shut off. They had to shave down the bone so that it could, you know, have a place to go. And that was somewhat successful. A year later, I had reoccurring symptoms and they put in 2 titanium discs to the front of my neck. And I had recovered very well from that. And then I was back at work. And recently I've been having, reoccurring symptoms. Randall says, okay. And Rocky says, and so I'm scheduled the 20th to see my surgeon as a follow-up. And I assume he means September 20th, which would be like the next day or so. As a follow-up, I got to have an MRI. And another MRI take off my spine this week. It was supposed to be yesterday, but it was canceled. And he goes, well, that's on September 20th. He goes like, yes, the titanium disc. Hold on. I need to take care of a spammer here. Okay. And the titanium disc. So was in August. So this is just recently, this has all happened. You said that you, after the titanium disc, you were feeling better for an extended period of time. And he goes, recovered nicely and well. Okay, when did the symptoms start to return? He goes, roughly a month to 6 weeks ago. So he's got these medical issues that they're talking about in the deposition that have nothing to do with the movie incident, but did start beforehand.
Yeah, so that's going to be a complication, and that's going to relate back to these affirmative defenses that we talked about last time that have to do with allocating causation. Because basically, if his position is that he already had these fairly extensive injuries as a result of something completely unrelated, Johnny Depp can potentially be held responsible for like exacerbating that condition. Although he hasn't really described that. I mean, it sounds like he's saying August 2016 it was fine, and then a month ago it wasn't. And so in this entire interim where the thing happened with Johnny Depp, it was fine. But I'm sure we'll get into more detail about that.
Yeah.
But anyway, that starts to become a fairly complicated medical question of what is the nature of the injury? How does the injury get affected by these intervening types of events, because they have to be able to sort out and distinguish this is what Johnny didn't cause versus this is what he did.
Right. So Randall's saying, and this is Johnny's attorney, do you have any idea what was there any sort of incident or accident that happened that would have led to reoccurring symptoms? And he says, getting up and stepping out of bed, who knows? So it seems to be pretty basic minor activity that flares him up.
Yeah, life.
Now, maybe I can fast forward to some of this. You've given this lawsuit, as you know, relates to an incident that occurred in April of 2017 on a movie set involving yourself and Johnny Depp, correct? Rocky says that's correct. And you've given sworn discovery responses in this case, indicating that you don't attribute any physical injuries to that incident with Mr. Depp in April of 2017. Are you aware that you've given those answers? Rocky goes, yes.
Oh, well, that makes it easy then. No physical injury.
Right. And Randall says, and is it fair to say then that you don't attribute any of your current physical conditions to anything that happened between you and Mr. Depp? Rocky goes, that's correct. He's pretty straightforward here.
Great.
Randall.
Well, that's easy.
Okay. I'm sure Randall's being taken by surprise here. He's okay, let me shift gears then. I'll remind you, if at any point you need to take a break, let me know. Have you done it? I thought it was going to be a good one. Have you done anything to prepare yourself for your deposition today? I'm not sure I understand what you mean. Okay.
That is quite a question coming on the heels of, no, I have no physical injury as a result of this assault.
Right. Okay. Well, have you, for example,
like, are you sure you know what you're talking about here?
Well, I'm sure his lawyer is dying right now, because she even throws in some comments later on that's going to have you dying. Okay. Have you reviewed any documents to get yourself back up to speed? And again, these are going to jump around because that was the section that was being objected to, of course. I have no injuries. So we're going to jump ahead. So ask the question again, please. Randall's saying, do you know one way or the other whether any person who actually told Mr. Bertolini that Mr. Depp was the one that was the source of blackballing? Again, I know this is very disjointed, but this is all we have. So he's now claiming that his injury is because he can't work because Johnny Depp has somehow initiated some kind of blackballing process against him.
Okay, which is a different cause of action than an assault, but
right.
We'll go with it.
And he says, do you know of anybody who could be the source of this? And he goes, I'm not sure. Question. Now you, in this action, you sued Brad Furman, correct? He goes, uh-huh. Is that a yes? Yes. And who is Mr. Furman? Mr. Furman's the director of the movie. And you also sued Miriam Segal. Is that correct? She's the producer of the movie. And did you sue her, correct? Correct? Yes. And you eventually dismissed the claims against Miss Segal and Mr. Furman, correct? Correct. To the extent that you've been put on a no hire list, is it possible that Mr. Furman might have some involvement in your appearing on a no hire list? He says it's possible. And to the extent you have actually been on some sort of no hire list, is it possible that Miss Segal might be responsible for you being put on that list? His attorney, objection calls for speculation. He says, yeah, it's possible. So right away I'm on this no hire list because I got fired. People don't want to work with me, and maybe it wasn't necessarily Johnny. As you sit here today, do you have any knowledge yourself that would enable you to identify the actual source of the blackballing in terms of who the person was that did it, or even if it happened? Rocky says, my guess would be that it's something to do with Mr. Depp's people and his influence over Hollywood.
Well, speaking of speculation.
Johnny is the omnipotent one in Hollywood who loves him so very much, right? I mean, look at the hit pieces this guy's endured well before this.
Is it possible there's no damn list at all?
Well, exactly. Randall, I'll move to strike that as non-responsive. Let me clarify. I don't mean to be rude by doing that. And he goes, I understand. But this is a process. And they're being very nice to Rocky. It's a process. And later on, we may be talking with the judge about whether answers are proper or not. I have to protect the record for that. He goes, I understand. Randall, and I'll just re-ask the question. I don't want you to guess, and you prefaced what you said by your best guess. So would you agree with me that other than guessing or speculating, you personally can't offer any testimony one way or the other as to the actual source of the blackballing in terms of who that person was? He goes, that's correct. Okay.
Well, that's an admission.
Right. So they have to take a little break. So we're going to move on to another section of testimony. Question. And that Good Films Incorporate, that's a reference to the Labyrinth film that you worked on, correct? So I think Miriam Segal is part of Good Films Productions. Yes. And that's the film where the incident between yourself and Mr. Depp occurred, correct? He says, yes, correct. Now called City of Lies. Yes. And so your work history shows that for several months after it, you went through October working on productions on a fairly regular basis, correct? He says, yes. And would you agree with me that none of the injuries that you attribute to the incident with Mr. Depp in any way prevented you from working in your chosen field at least through October 18th? 8th. Sorry, I got to block somebody. Your chosen field through October 8th. When he says, when you say injuries, does that have anything to do with the incident? Yes. Rocky says, okay, then yes. Okay, so tell me in the period between June 18, 2017 and October 8, 2017, when you had these jobs here that came after Labyrinth film. Yeah, well, what would you like to know? Well, my question simply is, and I need to find out from you, but my assumption, having looked at your work history here, was that for many months after the incident, you had no difficulty obtaining or doing work in your chosen field. He's like, it wasn't as easy as it used to be, but correct. And when you say it wasn't as easy as it used to be, what do you mean by that? He goes, well, there were people questioning me about the incident. Now, we didn't know about this incident until the lawsuit was filed and things like that, right? So they're talking about a time period right after the movie. So I'm not sure who's the one who's questioning him.
Well, it's just funny to me because imagine thinking that you have a right to go and get a job without being questioned at all about your performance on your last project. I mean,
right.
Employers have the right to ask questions about your work history. There is nothing unusual about this. There is nothing nefarious about this. This is normal due diligence, and it's particularly funny because to the extent that he's accusing Infinitum Nihil of negligently hiring and retaining Johnny Depp. That's the type of thing that is why employers need to ask these types of questions before you give somebody like Rocky Brooks a job.
Right. Especially if maybe has a spotty history anyway. Because, well, there's people questioning about the incident. He goes, okay, well, who are these people? Producers and such.
Like, do you have a name?
Yeah. Okay. Putting aside, and I wanted to make a distinction here. So putting aside any negative ramifications that you think other people in the industry might have had because you were involved with this incident. He goes, so set that aside, right? I want to focus only on your physical or emotional trauma that you suffered from the incident. Was there anything about your physical or emotional trauma from the incident that impaired your ability to work at least through October of 2017? Not really, no. I imagine his lawyers must be going nuts right now. Okay, so we'll get into the other issues. But in terms of your physical and mental condition, you'd agree with me that you were perfectly capable of working after the Labyrinth incident. He goes, yes. And would you also agree that any impairment of your ability to work in later periods has to do with your belief that you've been blackballed? Is that correct? I'm going to take a break. I'm getting hit in the comments, and I don't know how to enable subscriber mode. I'm going to try and look into my, I'm told that once the video starts, do you know about this, Andrea, that I can somehow?
I am not a StreamYard user.
That I have to go into YouTube. I have to get into the video. And I have to filter some messages. Live messages are visible. I don't see a way to do this, guys. Because I'd be happy to. Captions, loop, report, feedback, playback speed, watching. All right, let me go to the studio and see if there's something in the studio that I can do. I'm sorry. It's a YouTube function. I'm looking on YouTube. Live. Edit video. I'm supposed to go down to comments. The only option I have is hold potentially inappropriate comments for review. So I don't know if there's another way to do this. I'd be happy to. If somebody want to volunteer to be a mod, but then I have to figure out how to do that too. Yeah, captions available. No options here. Okay, Nikki, let's see if I can put you. Add moderator. Gotcha, Nikki. Do you think one is enough? Elaine Bridoff, I'm broken. I can be a moderator. Sorry, I just got to laugh at that one. Okay, so you would also agree that any impairment of your ability to work in later periods has to do with your belief that you have been blackballed. Is that correct? Correct. Would you also agree with me that any impairment of your ability to work in the period after Labyrinth has nothing to do with your physical or emotional trauma you claim to have suffered? Well, can you repeat the question? Sister, I just want to understand. Would you agree with me that no physical or emotional trauma that you attribute to the incident has impaired your ability to work since the incident occurred? I would disagree, and I would say emotional trauma is certainly rising its ugly head. Okay, when did emotional trauma begin to have an impact on your ability to work? I would say after filing suit. The story coming out in the news and then false stories coming out afterwards in the news really took a big hit on my emotional stability.
So your suing was the cause of your injury, not the assault, just to be clear.
Right, his own lawsuit has got him emotionally upset.
Imagine that. Being in court is stressful. Who could have foreseen that?
Okay. I'm sure Randall is like shocked at these answers. Would you agree with me that up through the filing of your complaint, that up through that point in time, your physical and emotional state had no, he's like, let me start over. Focusing on the period of time between the incident on Labyrinth, April 2017, and the date you filed your complaint, which was July 6th of 2018, he goes, right? Would you agree with me that between April and July, no physical or emotional trauma that you attributed to the incident impacted your ability to work? I would agree with the physical part, but the mental part is just having to do with people questioning me about the incident all the time. And it becomes a little bit overburdening, or, you know, it's a drag on you after a while. So, but yeah, I kept moving on, shrugging shoulders, and just another But stop me if I'm wrong. I want to clarify this. I think what you told me was the questioning that led to your emotional concerns. That questioning really started after you filed your complaint, correct? Rocky says, yeah, that's when the volcano erupted. But before that, it was always a constant.
Backpedaling rapidly.
I wonder what his lawyer is signaling, going, no, no, no. Okay, so before you filed your complaint, from time to time, people would ask you about the incident when you were seeking employment. Oh, everybody would ask about it when they heard who I was. Okay, or found out who I was, or found out about the story. Everybody. There was no escaping it. And that caused you to have anxiety. Oh, absolutely. What's the first time you can recall in your own mind's eye when any other person raised this incident as it related to your references to find employment? After filing suit. Okay. So his lawyer jumps in. For clarification, that was for employment.
Back and forth.
For employment. It was raised with relation to employment, correct? So they read back his last question. When was the first time you recall in your own mind's eye when any other person raised this incident as it related to your reference to find employment? And that would have been after the complaint was filed. And he goes, yes. Tell me how you end up getting the position on Labyrinth. I was on the availability list. Labyrinth had completed their principal photography, but had gone over schedule, and they lost their actor set. So they had just walked away and let it. They were paying for it as we were shut down. So I had to keep the, make sure everything was going smoothly with the Barclay Hotel, and then also deal with all the other new locations. The Peterson Museum, where I shut down Fairfax and Wilshire Boulevard for the reenactment of the Biggie Small murder. We shot at the El Rey Theater, various locations. Seems I have to watch for continuity because it cuts out on me sometimes.
Yeah.
Am I responsible to procure them? Do the contracts, insurance, all the hiring of the security and fire and police? That's my job. So you're responsible for securing the locations from soup to nuts. He goes, yep, from soup to nuts. Who was your employer on the Labyrinth production, if you know? What do you mean by employer?
What do you mean by employer?
Who wrote your
Totally
paycheck?
normal to not know who your boss is or who hired you.
Yeah, especially because he's suing Johnny's production company.
Yeah.
Who wrote your paychecks? Oh, Good Film Productions. And were you working on an independent contractor basis or on behalf of Good Film Productions? Yes. So wait, Good Film Productions didn't, for example, provide you with health benefits, correct? Oh no, I work for my health benefits through the union, and you need to have a certain amount of hours to accrue them. Okay, so employment type benefits in your line of work is something that you get through your union position, correct? Uh-huh. Is that a yes? Yes, sorry. And you contract then with Good Films was essentially as an independent contractor basis, correct? He goes, correct. And who did you report to at the Labyrinth matters? The head of me was Bruce Wayne Gillies. I'm sorry, what producer? Bruce Wayne Gillies. And what did you say after that? He was the line producer that hired me. Line, like line down the street? He goes, yes. I may have walked over and told, okay, so now we're jumping again. So we've established his employment there. So now we're jumping to closer to what was going on set. I may have walked over and told Miriam myself. I don't recall. You just let everybody know you got the extension. So he had gotten the extension. They had run over time, and he did get some extension. Was Miss Segal difficult to work with? He goes, extremely. Give me a little overview on that. Why do you think she was extremely difficult to work with? Just a bully. She's a bully. Didn't really listen to reason. When I took over the job, I was warned by the previous location department and all, most department heads on the show that this is a different kind of movie and that it's really toxic. Okay, and did anybody elaborate on what they meant by it's really toxic? They elaborated by the triangle relationship of Johnny, Miriam, and Brad. And what do you mean by the triangle relationship between them? The three of them as director, producer, A-list director, and star of the movie. And so people that were working on the production told you that the three-way combination was not healthy? He says, yes.
So notice how it's perfectly fine for Rocky to be gossiping with his coworkers about these other people.
Right.
But when these other people talk about him, that's sue worthy.
Oh. Oh. And that was a three-way combination. That was a different work environment. Yes. Did you share those views once you began working on the project? Yes. Was Mr. Furman also difficult to work with? Extremely. And what about Mr. Furman was difficult to work with? Again, just combative, doesn't really listen to reason, only wanted his way, did things that didn't really make sense, wasted a lot of time. What do you mean wasted a lot of time? Indecisions, just unprofessionalism, sorry. All right,
Well,
yeah.
I'm really glad that we have it established here that the only person who is actually competent to make movies is Rocky.
I was just going to say that. He's coming across like, yeah, he's coming across like I should be the boss of this picture. These producers and film people and stars don't know how to make a movie. I do.
How dare these people that are in charge act like they're in charge?
All right. So give me your recollection. Once you communicated to Mr. Gillies that you'd gotten the extensions to 11 o'clock and midnight for the inside shoot, what do you recall next happening that day? The day went on as usual. We did our filming. Everything was as usual. The usual hectic film set, trying to get everything done with a timeline. Nothing unusual. And was from your observation, were things going along business as usual right up to the point you had to encounter Mr. Depp? Somewhat, yes. And as usual. By somewhat, I take that as a qualification. What was not business as usual prior to the incident with Mr. Depp? He says, I just movie production nonsense. That's all. It's no specific thing. It's just all the ins and outs and minutia of like, can we just get through this day and all the craziness that surrounds it? I couldn't give you anything specific. Oh, but they will.
Normal chaos is what I'm hearing.
Would you agree that day was getting tense all the way around because of the impending deadlines? Yes, it was the last day of filming. So that's good to know. Last day of filming. I can understand it's stressful for everybody. They're done. They need to wrap and get it finished. Yeah. So would you agree that Ms. Segal and Mr. Furman were particularly difficult to work with that day? Most likely. Not even a definitive answer. Would you also agree that Mr. Depp was under time constraints that day as a co-producer? Absolutely. Would you agree that the general feeling on the set before the incident was somewhat tense? Oh, it was tense. It was every day. Was it more tense that day? It's hard to say. Mod secrets, squirrel. Okay. I thought I did. Anyway, what do they mean by mod secrets, squirrel? I think I added her. Okay. Done. Gotcha. Was it somewhat tense? It was every day. Was it more tense that day? It's hard to say. Thanks for the mods. I really appreciate it. Sorry you guys are getting hit up. And I know this is really good information that y'all want to pay attention to. You shouldn't be attacked like that. So Randall says, okay, do you recall if you had any interactions with people besides Mr. Depp right before the incident that you would categorize as in any way tense? Yes. Well, tell me such interactions you had before the incident. Well, there was this incident with the security guard for Gilmore Associates. Okay. Tell me what you recall about that interaction between yourself and that security guard. Well, the problem with Richard Wynn and Gilmore Associates are that Gilmore Associate owns all the filming properties around the area that we were filming. And they like to extort money from productions who were silly enough to pay them for no reason. And our movie was over budget and over deadline, and they were trying to extort money from our production. And it's my job as location manager to make sure that doesn't happen. And so when they try to extort money unsuccessfully from the production, Richard Wynn, who was in charge of filming at Gilmore Associates, sent his security guard out on the street to take videotape. Well, how do you know that? Well, because he was. I mean, how do you know Mr. Wynn sent the security guard to do videotape? because that's what he does every time. That's his MO. He always has a security guard film other people's productions, so they have a record of it, so that they, it's a battle of Film LA. So Film LA is who they have to get their permits from to film on certain streets in the area. Apparently, this Gilmore owns or represents these areas. So they're the ones who ultimately say, yes, you can film here from this hour to this hour on this day to this day. So LA Films organizes it, but it's ultimately Gilmore Associates who's going to say, yeah, you can use our property. That's my understanding. And when you say when you say your perception of Gilmore Associates somehow trying to extort the production, what do you mean by that? So they own all the properties. And in one incident, there's some lights that are from the Barclay Hotel connected to their property. We wanted to get them turned off, and they wanted $2,500 to have them turned off. So we just said, no, we'll leave them on. Thank you. And I wonder if we is him. I wonder if there was some line of communication there to help support his decisions. That I don't know.
We here.
And the other time is when we were going to be out on the street doing this filming with Johnny closing the street. We were in front of the Gilmore Associates old bank building, which is on 4th Street. It's an empty building and there's no business inside of it. So our filming is not impeding with their course of business in any of their residents. Reynolds says, and how did you observe them trying to do any type of extortion as it pertained to this bank building on that day? Well, in order for me to get extended hours, we have to have the, Richard Wynn, who represents Gilmore Associates, to sign off on anything permit-wise. And for me to get extended hours, they have to sign off on it. Well, what happens if they refuse to sign off? Well, it just depends. Usually people pay and he signs off. But I immediately started an email chain with Film LA and my film coordinator. There you go. And I showed them the text chain that he was trying to get $2,500 for us to film out there. And I, had the backing of Film LA that you do not need to pay him anything. You are on a public sidewalk and you're not responsible for paying him anything. Question. So Film LA said, don't pay him? Correct. And then what happened from there in relation to your interaction with anybody from Gilmore? Well, it's a game that we play with Richard Wynn, and I got a little excited, and he sent the security guard out there, and I flipped him off. Behind my back because I was
excited and required security to respond.
I was sending a little love message to Richard Wynn. He had nothing to do with anything else. Now, this is important. They needed an extension of the permit.
And he was getting security called on him.
And because he's flipping him off and he got in a verbal altercation with this guy. So ultimately, this guy says, you know what? I'm not giving you the extension. And I think that's why Rocky may have been fired. Not because of the incident with Johnny, but because he caused them not to get their extension that they needed.
Yeah.
That's what I'm reading from this anyway. And I'm sure Randall is going, where does this go into? He's not expecting this. Okay, let me back up. So Mr. Wynn, was it Mr. Wynn personally that refused to sign off on the extension? Yeah, he did not sign off on the extension. And did he communicate that directly to you? He didn't sign off on it. I don't know who he communicated it to or not. We went ahead. And we're going to get a break there. So they come back another day. Come back. So yeah, that's what's happened is he pissed off the guy that from Gilmore Associates, and security was called on him. He flips them off and they're like, yeah, we're not giving the extension.
Oh my God.
So again, these are the objections. This is why it's kind of bumping around. Okay, so how many other discussions had you had with Mr. Duffy? I don't know who Mr. Duffy is, but Mr. Duffy somehow, I think, had something to do with the article from the New York Post and possibly maybe him getting doing this lawsuit. Okay, when was this discussion? That was right after the New York Post article came out, and he called me. And when did the New York Post article come out? May of 2018, I believe. And was that before or after the lawsuit had been filed? So that was before. So someone leaked to the New York Post to write about this, and this was before he filed the lawsuit. In the New York Post article from May of 2018, the first published article about the incident that you recall ever learning about, he goes, yes. So fair to say that prior to the New York Post article being published in May of 2018, you never heard that there was any sort of other press coverage about the incident, correct? That's correct. Okay, and you said Mr. Duffy called you after the New York Post article came out in May. That's correct. Tell me what you recall about that discussion. I was driving and we were in a bad cell zone. So we had discussion that was hard to hear from each other. Eventually I called them back and we discussed the article and we went over again the case, the what happened on set. In either of these discussions with Mr. Duffy, did you tell him that Mr. Depp had physically struck you? You said yes. And tell me as best as you can recall what you conveyed to him about that. I told him that in the process of enforcing the permit for Film LA, I walked up to the first AD and told him that it was the last shot, and I was directed by Brad Furman, the director, to tell that to Johnny Depp. And I went over to tell my officer, John Big Rig, it's big in quotes, Rig, to enforce the permit. And what else did you tell Mr. Duffy about? So we're going to jump again. This is the part that they're objecting to. So I don't know who Mr. Duffy is. I don't know if he's a potential lawyer.
Yeah, who knows? I mean, if it was a potential lawyer, you would expect that it would be privileged and he wouldn't have to disclose any of that stuff. So it could also maybe be a journalist, be an agent, somebody.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we're going to jump again. Do you have any idea why Mr. Depp approached you to speak with you? Calls for speculation. You can go ahead and answer the question. He goes, did you have any idea why Mr. Depp approached you? He says, no. Would Mr. Depp have any reason to know that you were doing anything to shut down the production at the time you approached him? No. So his claim was originally, or the story was that he was told by Brad Furman, go tell Johnny you have to shut down the set. And that in doing so was when Johnny got angry with him and yelled at him. Mm-hmm. Now he's claiming that he was on his way to talk to Johnny, thought maybe I should get the off-duty or retired LAPD security guy on set. Maybe I should get him to come with me. And then Johnny, for no reason, just started yelling at him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, before he'd even said anything to Johnny?
Exactly. Okay, so you sit here today knowing all the events that transpired. Can you think of any reason why it was that Mr. Depp approached you that evening? He overheard Brad Furman tell me to go tell him it was the last shot. So you believe Mr. Depp heard that and then approached you for that reason. Is that your testimony? Absolutely. Okay, how close was Mr. Furman at the time Mr. Depp interacted with you that evening? Mr. Furman and Mr. Silver were next to each other. I'm not sure where Mr. Depp was. I was not looking for him at the time. So, and when you say you weren't sure where Mr. Depp was at the time, you're referring now to the moments before he approached you, correct? He says, that's correct. At the time Mr. Depp approached you and came within a few feet of you, do you recall how close Mr. Furman was to the two of you? 10 feet. Okay, was his view of the interaction between yourself and Mr. Depp blocked in any way to your knowledge? Witness says, I don't believe so. So from your recollection of that evening, you would have expected that Mr. Furman would have had a clear view of what took place between yourself and Mr. Depp that evening. Witness says, correct. Now let's continue going through chronologically here. I think where we left off was you said you were surprised and Mr. Depp approached you from your left-hand side and came within a few feet of you, correct? He says, yes. And he then raised his voice at you, correct? He goes, yes. So that's where we got. There's no altercation. It's just suddenly Johnny started yelling, apparently.
Yeah.
So let's get back into context here. Let me back up and give you one of the ground rules I didn't remind you of. You know, he doesn't want you to speculate anything. Don't assume anything. It's okay. So is it fair to say you don't remember whether you were wearing a coat that evening or not at the time you had this exchange with Mr. Depp? Because that's correct. Okay. Did you shout out in pain when you were hit with either of these punches? No. Did you get the wind knocked out of you when you were hit by either of these punches? No. Did you drop to a knee at any time that you were hit with either of these punches? No. Did you make any sort of physical reaction that would indicate that you were in any sort of pain or distress at the time you were hit with either of these punches? I was more surprised. So he's not wearing a coat. He's not wearing anything thick. that could take the impact of these so-called punches to his ribs.
Mm-hmm.
I was more surprised. So is that a no to my question? Well, the punches hurt. Okay. Did you make a physical reaction when you were hit with these punches? I don't remember. Did either of the punches bring you to tears? No. Did either of the punches knock you down? No. Did either of the punches leave you any physical marks on your body? No. By your answer to that question, is it your testimony that you did not have any bruising on your body based on these punches? I don't recall seeing any bruising. Okay. Doesn't mean it wasn't there.
Okay, I'm just going to say right now, as a habitual rib puncher, okay,
Right.
your hand is so much more fragile than a person's ribs. If you are bare knuckle hitting somebody in the ribs, you are going to mess up your hand so badly. There is a reason why boxers wear big old protective gloves. It's not to keep the other guy's body from being hurt. It is to protect your very fragile hand here. So this is complete nonsense. 2 bare knuckle punches to the ribs did not happen.
No, he felt nothing. And I think he's trying to quantify that because nobody saw the punches, and he's going to try and suggest, well, they didn't see the punches because I didn't react.
Yeah. Well, and he's also trying to explain, it's just bizarre. There's no bruising. I mean, if it was a hard punch, I mean, you're probably going to have some type of bruise. He's having to explain away why he doesn't have documentary evidence of any type of injury, because you would think, oh, gee, Johnny Depp punched me in the ribs, I'm going to be set for life. Here's my little bruise. I'm going to take a picture of it. That's just common sense. But he obviously doesn't have that.
Nope. Doesn't mean there weren't any.
Yeah.
And remember, this is all being thought out after his interlocutories with his lawyers going, what do you mean you haven't seen a doctor? What do you mean you did? So they're trying to readdress this from that.
Yeah.
So is it your testimony today that you don't recall either of these punches causing you to suffer any bruising? That's correct. And it's also fair then to say that after this incident, you didn't make any effort to take any pictures showing any bruising on your body, correct? Yes, that's fair to say. Okay, so now we're jumping into another section because obviously they want it cut out of his testimony about him not having any injuries or bruising or feeling any of the punches. During that discussion, did you discuss what had happened between yourself and Mr. Depp? I don't remember. Do you have any sort of formal training in self-defense? No. Have you ever served in the military? No. Now, in the complaint you filed in this action, and I'm going to paraphrase, but the allegations indicate words to the effect that throughout the incident with Mr. Depp, you remained calm. Would you agree with that? Witness says yes. As best you can do it, can you describe for me what your demeanor was after you got struck by Mr. Depp? How did you react, if at all? To the best of my recollection, once I was approached by Mr. Depp and started being screamed at and berated in front of the whole crew and then being punched, I don't really remember. I just know that I had to stay calm because it's my job to stay calm and diffuse situations.
Like you did with the owner of the property?
Flipping him off is how you diffuse situations. Having them being aggressive enough that they had to call out their security and videotaped. Obviously, they were videotaping to prove how bad this guy was. I don't know if they got the videotapes. I just know that I had to stay calm because it's my job to stay calm and diffuse situations. But in my mind, I was thinking, this is unbelievable to me. I cannot believe this is happening. This is so unreal. Oh my God, that sounded like somebody with that first slap. I couldn't believe it was happening to me.
Yeah. All I could see was the dirty carpet.
Exactly. Looking backwards on this interaction between yourself and Mr. Depp, do you believe that Mr. Depp intended to cause you any sort of harm at the time of this exchange? I don't know what he intended. And his lawyer goes, whoops, wait, calls for speculation.
Little late on the trigger on that one.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to put it out there. This deposition was taken in September of 2019. Amber filed in April 2019 all her list of incidents and her claims and stuff. So There could be some influence here.
Yeah.
Adam did claim that the lawyers did talk and strategize.
Well, it wouldn't surprise me. And I mean, I don't remember the exact timeline of all of the press articles either. But I do. I mean, I remember the Mandel and Bloom litigation was going
Yep.
on. The Rolling Stone article came out. The GQ article came out.
Yep.
All of this stuff that was, not necessarily all that flattering, and painting him as somebody who is, always drunk and on drugs and out of control and causing problems on sets and stuff. So it definitely seems like there's just a snowballing effect of, hey, all this information is out there. Why don't I go ahead and present a story that's consistent with all that?
Right. Okay. So looking backwards in time, do you have any reason to believe that Mr. Depp intended to somehow offend you by his conduct? Yes. What about the events caused you to say that you have that belief? Well, he approached me. He belittled me in front of the crew. He punched me when I was doing my job. Due to protocol, Film LA says wrap up the permit, and that's what I'm doing. My interaction was never supposed to be with Mr. Depp. So yes, I was very surprised and taken aback. Would you agree that the best person to ask about Mr. Depp's intentions were at the time would be Mr. Depp himself? Yes. You say Mr. Depp belittled you in front of the crew. And were there particular words that Mr. Depp used that you consider to be belittling towards you? Who the fuck are you? What the fuck do you think you're doing? That sounds to me like words that Rocky used to that woman.
Yeah.
That sounds words that Rocky used to that security guy from the other property. Anyway, any other words that consider you to be belittling directed to you at Mr. Depp? Yes, that. And he said, I don't give a fuck who you are or what you're doing. And then punching me is pretty belittling also, I would believe. And again, those words, I don't give a fuck who you are and what you're doing, can also be applied to that woman, can also be applied to that guy he just flipped off.
Yeah.
He's the one who's in charge of the property. So they're going to have to take a break. So they come back. Mr. Brooks, I want to get back up and ask you a few more questions about the exchange where you say Mr. Depp screamed at you and hit you with a couple punches. It's correct. Okay. Can you remember how long the incident with Mr. Depp lasted between the time you recall him approaching you and raising his voice to the time his bodyguards left with him? How long did the whole thing last? It seemed like forever, but I don't know. Give me an estimate. Couple minutes. At any point during the interaction, did you call out to anybody else to help you? He says, no. So whatever happened with him going to get this security person on the set who was the retired LAPD, he never thought to yell out to him. So he didn't think to yell out to anybody for help. He goes, no. At any point in that interaction, did you even consider turning and fleeing? He says, no. Why not? I didn't consider it. Were you ever fearful for your own personal safety? Yes. And describe for me what your feelings were in that regard. Well, again, I'm standing there on set. I've just been punched twice by a big star, being yelled at, offered to punch him in the face for $100,000. That was a very scary situation for me. I've never encountered anything like that in my 25 years of production experience. And I was very scared. Randall says, that being said, is there any reason you didn't reach out to anyone else that was in that same vicinity and ask for any kind of help? It was a spur of the moment thing. No. Sticking with the this incident here again for a moment, can you recall any physical reaction you displayed when you were hit with the punches? I don't remember. Can you even recall flinching at the time you were hit with either of these punches? And I think these are important questions because Emma Danhoff, she is the script supervisor, and she's in charge of taking those detailed photos. We know there's a ton of photos that have been taken, not video, but a lot of photos. And I bet they can line those up and see that he never changed the position of his body during this altercation.
Yeah.
Can you remember flinching? I don't remember. Can you remember dropping your arms to your side to cover up after you were hit with either of these punches? No. And again, they would show up in the pictures, any of this kind of physical movement.
Yeah. I mean, you're just going to instinctively cover. I mean, if
cover your belly.
If you're not going to attack, you're going to instinctively protect yourself.
Yeah. Is it fair to say that you sit here today, you really don't recall what physical reaction, if any, you had at the time these punches were landed on? he has to repeat the question. Is it fair to say you don't recall one way or another any physical reaction, if any, you had at the time of these punches? So I don't think he did. So Armanex, his lawyer says, depends on the psychology of the person, I guess. The witness says everybody's different. How long before the incident between yourself and Mr. Depp was it that you saw Mr. Depp smoking marijuana on the balcony? Now, we know Johnny smokes those rolled up, hand-rolled cigarettes. Those little blunt, what do they call them? Blunts. They're little. They're in brown paper.
Yeah, they're just little rollies.
Right. So he's seeing him smoking from the balcony, and he's assuming it's marijuana. We'll see. Within a couple hours. Okay, was the incident where you saw Mr. Depp smoking marijuana on the balcony the only time that day that you saw Mr. Depp do any sort of drugs on the set? Yes. Now, in his original claim, he claimed Johnny was drunk and drugged on the set all day.
He had the odor of alcohol.
Right. Have you ever personally observed Mr. Depp taking any sort of drugs other than marijuana? No. Did you actually? Well, when you observed Mr. Depp on the balcony of the Barclay, could you smell what was being smoked? He goes, yes. Can you describe for me what you smelled? Smelled like burning marijuana. Randall, is it fair to say from your own personal experience that you knew at that point in time what marijuana smelled like? That's a little bit of a zinger back. All right, so we're jumping ahead again. Sorry to do this, but that's what happens when you're just dealing with objections. He was within 10 feet of me. He was the person I was walking towards when the incident happened. As you sit here today, can you remember anything Mr. Rigg told you in his phone conversation that caused you to believe that he had witnessed Depp punch you? Rigg is that Mr. Big Rigg. He's the retired LAPD that was supposed to be the security on the set. So is there anything to believe that he witnessed Mr. Depp punch you? He did not. He knew that there was an altercation between the two of us, but he did not see the punch. So no witness there. Mm-hmm. Fair enough. I'm not trying to, trick anyone. I just want to know what everybody told you. Because, yeah. So now you say you talked to Mr. Rigg 2 times. Is that correct? Yes. Tell me, how did the second discussion come about? Well, I called him. So he's trying to set up this guy as a witness who did not witness anything. Mm-hmm. So again, we go to objection.
We heard that from as well. Oh, that person can back me up. No, don't bring them into court.
Yeah. And again, just because he said he was, I see some of the questions, because he said he was smoking marijuana, doesn't mean he was. Nobody else is. They're going to have to bring some witness. Said, well, if you can smell it, it must have been wafting everywhere because you were down on the street and he's up in this hotel. And again, we know what kind of cigarettes he smokes. Constantly, he smokes like a chimney. So now we're going to go to someone else. Do you remember ever speaking with Malcolm Connolly about the incident? Because I don't remember Malcolm. Who's Malcolm Connolly? Okay, let's shift gears now, at least from the witnesses, and we can go back to the incident. So Malcolm Connolly, we know, is Johnny's security who's been with him a long time. So he was there. Sean, I think, was there. Jerry Judge was there. Okay, so let's shift gears now. I'm going to get back to... I tend to kind of get locked in. He's saying, it's okay. So if I'm oblivious to your needs, you need to tell me. Because again, he's still got to get up and walk around. Okay. So after Mr. Depp and his bodyguards went back to what they were doing after the exchange with you, what do you remember next doing on the set in terms of performing your job? Again, I remember making sure the streets got clear and that we were off the streets and the street was reopened and lights were gone and the cables were off. And then I remember being upstairs for the wrap. And what does that mean, the wrap? When we finished filming. And what role, if any, what was your job function in relation to wrapping up the filming? Again, I'm the location manager. I'm responsible for making sure the permit's enforced. And did you continue to perform your job functions as production manager the entire the manager the entire evening? So he wasn't injured enough that he couldn't finish out the night, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Were you physically and emotionally able to perform your job functions that evening after the incident? Yes. Did you ever file a police report in relation to what occurred between yourself and Mr. Depp? No. Why not? Did not occur to me. Did you believe the evening of the incident that Mr. Depp had assaulted you? Yes. Did you ever talk with anyone about it? I want to exclude your wife and your lawyers. So again, we're going to be broken up here. Picking up the questioning again. At the time, on the evening of the incident, was it your understanding that Mr. Big Rig was actually employed by the LAPD? He's a retired officer. Okay, how do you know that? Because he's a retired officer. I like that answer. How do you know he's a retired officer? Did he tell you that? Yeah, I've worked with him many times. Have you worked with Big Rig since the City of Lies project? I believe we have, yes. I think so. Can you remember what projects you worked with him on? No. Did you ever ask any member of law enforcement to do anything to investigate what had happened between yourself and Mr. Depp? No. Why not? Did not occur to me. At any point through today, did you seek any sort of medical treatment for in relation to anything that happened to you with the incident with Mr. Depp? Just therapy.
Just therapy.
Okay, we're going to break that up. Do I correctly understand that from the moment that Mr. Depp landed these punches on you on the set through today, you haven't seen any medical doctor for any complaints about what happened to you? He says, no. No, I've never seen a medical doctor. Is that because you didn't feel the need to seek medical treatment? He goes, yes. And you've given some sworn discovery responses in this case that say essentially that the injuries you're claiming are emotional injuries, not physical. Is that still your position? He says, yes. So he's changing that from his original claim that now it's only emotional injuries.
Okay.
And will you agree with me today that you didn't suffer any physical injuries as a result of this incident? No. No, you wouldn't agree? Or no, you didn't suffer any physical injuries? Well, he hit me. It hurt. So that's physical injury. Would you agree with me that the physical injury was never something that rose to the level that caused you to think you needed any sort of medical treatment? It was yes. Did you do anything to self-medicate yourself for any physical pain as a result of anything that happened? I go home, take my, nighttime pain medicine for my injuries. So he's already on, he's admitting he takes routine pain medication. And the injuries you're referring to are, the injuries relating to your spinal cord. He goes, yes. Okay. And the injuries relating to your spinal cord are not something you attribute to Mr. Depp. He says, that's correct. As long as we're on the subject, so they're going to go through that. He's been very specific about these injuries. I wonder if these other injuries he's suffered are from another claim he's made. So he has to be very careful not to cross, dirty the water here, muddy the waters, if you will, say that injury was only that injury, not caused by Mr. Depp, because maybe I've already made a claim.
It could be a past car accident, or it could be a past workers' comp claim type of thing.
But since he's accept payment or something, I think has to be very careful not to muddy that up. That's my interpretation.
Or disability.
So we're moving on again. You don't know her credentials one way or another, correct? I guess not. But so this is his family therapist. He doesn't know anything about her education or anything other than she's a family therapist. Correct. And you actually had sought assistance from Miss Brigham prior to the incident, correct? Correct. Okay. It's the only
He consulted with the family therapist before he had the emotional injury that required the therapy.
Well, I think he's had some. I think he's had some past emotional issues that she dealt with him. Yeah. Okay. It's going to get good now. Is this the only professional that you've sought any treatment from as a result of the incident? And that would be Miss Brigham. Yes. Okay. And since the incident happened, how many times have you visited Miss Brigham to seek treatment? At this point, 3. Were 2 of those within the past few months? Yes. So he had not seen her until after those discovery interlocutories. That's when he decided, gee, maybe I better see someone. Do you recall the evening of the incident while things were wrapping up that you sat down with Mr. Depp and had a talk? I recall at wrap, he apologized to me and let me back up. How do you remember it was that you came to talk with? I don't know what he means by let me back up. How do you remember how it was to come to talk with Mr. Depp during the wrap? I was on the 2nd floor of the Barclay Hotel. Okay. Where we were finishing up filming for the night. Camera had wrapped and he approached me to apologize. Did he approach you or did someone on his behalf say that Mr. Depp wanted to speak with you? He goes, I don't remember. That may have been what happened, but I really don't remember how it happened. I just remember he came up to me with an apology. And where were you when he offered the apology? On the 2nd floor on the Barclay set on the 2nd floor. Did you actually sit down with Mr. Depp, or was this just a stand-up discussion between the two of you? I remember, sorry, just checking the chat there. I remember it to be a stand-up discussion. Do you have any recollection of sitting down and having a glass of wine with Mr. Depp that evening? Just no. Do you drink wine? No. Do you drink at all? Rarely. Do you recall the words Mr. Depp used when he approached you as things were wrapping up? Because no. Is it fair to say you do remember the specific words he used? But the gist of it, from your recollection, was he offered an apology. Yeah, it was an apology. Did he say anything to you during the discussion about whether or not he had physically struck you? I do not believe that happened. What did you say to Mr. Depp when he offered an apology? Because I don't remember. I believe just, he apologized to me. Some words were said, and then we kind of did the bro thing, and,
The bro thing? You chest bumped with Johnny Depp? Or did you slap his butt? Which one was it?
Good question. Well, the witness is indicating what he did. And he goes, wait, when you say you did the bro thing, what did you mean by that? You shake hands and you go like that. And it's,
okay.
And the witness is indicating. So I think it's a hug. I think they did a bro hug. So his attorney is like, I guess Randall's trying to imitate what he thinks he's done. And Rocky's attorney goes, you don't know what the bro thing is? We're going to bro right now at the end of this depo. She's saying that to Johnny's lawyer. You know what the bro thing is? We're going to bro right now at the end of this depo, because she's going to be so happy when it's done. Okay, you gestured for us, and I can appreciate that, but our reporter can't write that down. So although our video can, but I'm not sure that's admissible. So, but regardless, I just want to understand exactly what happened between the two of you from what you're describing to me. So in your mind's eye, you recall Mr. Depp offering words that you took as an apology, correct? And you can't recall one way or the other whether he said he had done or not done anything to you, correct? It's just you remember an apology. Is that right? Yeah. Yeah, and then after the apology and you say some words were exchanged, can you remember any of the words that were exchanged? Just an apology. And you say we did the bro thing. By that, you gave a gesture. You kind of shake hands with him. Yeah. Was it like a fist bump or something? Oh, no, sorry. This is Randall. Was it like a fist bump or something like that you described for me? It's a shake hands and then that's it. His attorney says, describe with your hands what you're doing. You shake hands and then you go kind of half a hug, a sort of a lighthearted tap hug. So yeah, they shook hands and hugged. It's a bro hug. He's like, I think he's panicked to say that he hugged him. I don't know. So I guess his ribs weren't hurting him either to be able to hug. So you and Mr. Depp joined hands as a handshake. Yes. And then you simultaneously kind of wrapped the other arm around each other. Yeah. And you effectively gave each other a hug, a bro hug. Yeah.
No homo.
And you call it a bro hug. Yeah. Okay. So how long did this interaction with Mr. Depp last? Not long. Was anybody else present to witness this to your knowledge? There were people on the set clearing out. I don't know who was up there to see it. Did you accept his apology? Yes. Did you tell him you had no hard feelings? I don't remember what I said to him. Do you think you conveyed that sort of sentiment to him at that time? He apologized to me and we hugged it out. So probably yes. Okay. So based on what you do remember about what the two of you did in this exchange, it's your best recollection that you have conveyed to him somehow that you're accepting his apology, correct? Yes. Guys, I want you to know in the comments, I'm not ignoring you. I'm just trying to be mindful of Andrea's limited time, but we'll be getting to your questions the best that I can, but I'm going to keep pushing through this. Sorry, but here comes the good part. Do you remember taking a selfie with Mr. Depp at the time when he offered the apology? It was later in the evening. How much later in the evening was it you took a selfie? It actually wasn't a selfie. Someone took the picture for me. Okay, so at some point, well, let me stick to the moment for the discussion, where he apologized and you accepted. Can you recall anything else that transpired between the two of you during the exchange? No, the apology happened. I just wanted to be over with so I can go about my business. Okay. Can you recall any of the words you conveyed to Mr. Depp at the time he offered the apology? No, I cannot. Now, at some point after, and there was in the lobby of the Barclay Hotel, is that right? No, this was on the second floor of the set of the Barclay where we finished filming. You tell me everything you recall about that encounter with Mr. Depp? Yes. Okay, so some point later that evening, did you again come in contact with Mr. Depp? Yes. And when was that? That would be in the parking lot after we cleared the building. So tell me what you recall about that. We were just trying to get everybody out of the parking lot. Depp was taking pictures with his fans who were waiting for him. Miguel thought it would be a good idea to take a picture. So you and Miguel Gutierrez were present at the time. Thanks. Is that a yes? Yes. And Mr. Depp was also present. And what did Mr. Gutierrez say to you about whether a picture ought to be taken? I believe he asked Johnny if he would take a picture with me. And what did Mr. Depp say? He said yes. And did Mr. Depp then allow Mr. G to take a picture of you with Mr. Depp? Yeah. Do you have a copy of that picture in your possession, custody, or control? I'd have to look for it. I deleted it. Did Mr. G text a copy of that photo to you after he took it? I don't remember if he used my phone or his phone, but was the phone taken by him? Yes. On an I-type phone? Yes. And you don't remember if it was your phone or his phone? That's correct. Have you looked on? I mean, do you still own the same phone that you had that evening? Probably not. No. Do you know what became of that photo that you had that evening? That phone? Yeah, it broke.
It broke. It just accidentally got smashed with a bunch of hammers and dropped into the ocean. You know, just one of those things that happens.
And he never backed up, probably. So I replaced it with a new phone. When's the last time you've seen a copy of this picture of yourself with Mr. Depp that Mr. J took it? When I erased it off Facebook. What was that? Right after I filed suit. Isn't that intentional destruction of evidence? Right after
it's a big gray area.
Why did you erase the photo right after you filed suit? Didn't seem like a good idea to be there.
So he does have some insight.
And why do you think it wasn't a good idea for it not to be there? Common sense. Did the photo remain on your Facebook page from, at, or about the day after the incident until the day you filed lawsuit? Yes. Were you and Mr. Depp both smiling in the photo? Yes. Is this the photo that you posted on your Facebook page that Mr. Gutierrez took? It's the only photo you're aware of that's ever been taken. Yes. So let's take a really quick look at the photo. And he's so unhappy. He's such an unhappy man there. Johnny looks tired, exhausted. He's worked. I mean, you have to remember they worked very early in the morning. He had friends come. Biggie's mother was there. It was a long, emotional day. And he's like, thumbs up, man. Here I am with Johnny Depp. Thumbs up. And then he posted, I guess he texted it to somebody and said, that's a wrap. Smiley face. So I imagine that's evidence is pretty strong.
Yeah, that definitely doesn't help his claim.
He's hurting so much.
He's so emotionally distressed by this encounter that he had. He probably has PTSD.
When was the last time you've seen the photo? Ask and answer. When I erased it. If you wanted to go about getting a copy of it, anyway, we know they got a copy. Did you talk with any of Mr. Depp's security guards at any point that evening of April 12th after the incident between you and Mr. Depp? I don't remember speaking to any of the security guards. Do you know who Sean Bett is? I think he's one of his security guards. Do you have any recollection of speaking to Sean Bett at any point about the incident between yourself and Mr. Depp? No. Do you recall speaking to Mr. Bett at any point about any topic whatsoever? He goes, no. Did you tell Mr. Depp at any point the evening of April 12th after the incidents that you thought he had physically assaulted you? No. Did you tell Mr. Depp at any point the evening of April 12th that he had done anything that hurt you? He says, no. Did you tell Mr. Depp at any point in the evening of April 12th that he had done anything that caused you to take great offense? He says, no. Did you tell Mr. Depp at any point during the evening of April 12th that he'd done anything to cause emotional trauma? No. Did you ever tell Mr. Depp that you were traumatized what he'd done? No. Did you make any effort to reach out and contact Mr. Depp at any point prior to filing the lawsuit? No. I want to back up in time now and pick up where we left off your first day of your deposition, okay? I was examining you on the first day of your deposition about an exchange that had occurred between yourself and the security guard from Gilmore Associates shortly before the incident. Do you recall those questions? Yes, I do. I think it's interesting the way lawyers flop around like this to like double backtrack to say, well, wait a minute, you said this before. Is this still your same story? So we're back to Gilmore security guard was something that occurred in the range of 15 minutes before your encounter with Mr. Depp. He says, yes. Now I think, well, did you flip off the security guard from Gilmore Associates at the time you were interacting with him? Yeah, I did. And the flip off, I mean, you showed him your middle finger, correct? He goes, yep. Which is a body language way of basically saying, fuck you, correct? He goes, yep. Why did you do that? Why did you do that? It's going to answer the question now. So again, the Tom Gilmore Associates and Richard Wynn, who is the filming location he is on for Gilmore Associates, when you film in that area, they are very adamant about trying to receive money from productions, whether they deserve it or not. And again, my job is to make sure that we don't pay Richard Wynn when it's not necessary. And so at this point, there was multiple extensions of the permit, and the last extension of the permit went over the time, 10 p.m., on the street where he feels that he needs to be compensated for his building. But we were not filming at his buildings. We were filming on the sidewalk in front of an old empty bank, which they own, and they felt they needed to be compensated for. My job as location manager is to watch the money, and we were severely over budget and over schedule, and the $2,500 extortion payment wasn't going to happen. Let me fast forward of this out because I don't want to spend a lot of time of it. We already covered it. Is it fair to summarize that Film LA eventually said, go ahead and film without Gilmore signing off? He goes, yes. And then is it also fair to say that once that occurred, Gilmore had one of its personnel come on set and start videotaping your production? He goes, yes. That's probably to prove to his boss that they continued filming and they didn't pay us.
Yeah.
And that's what led to your encounter where you flipped off the security guard from Gilmore, correct? Yes. I want to cover what leads up to your flipping him off. Describe to me the interaction you had with the security guard from Gilmore once he started filming and what's going on in the set. I remember when I saw him filming, it was about 10 p.m. and I was nearby and I had my back turned to him and I flipped him the bird. But that was meant for Richard Wynn, not for the security guard. By flipping the bird, you mean flipped him off? Yes. And your recollection is you did that with your hand behind your back, facing away from the security guard. Yes. Was Mr. Gutierrez present with you at the time? I don't know. Did you have any recollection, one way or the other, whether Mr. G's presence with you when you were interacting with the Gilmore security guard? He's always nearby, but I don't know if he was right there. Besides flipping off the Gilmore security guard, did you have a verbal argument with him? I don't remember that. Of course he doesn't. How close did you get physically to the Gilmore security guard? I remember having my back towards him. Did you ever get in the Gilmore Associates security guard face during this interaction? I don't remember that. Is it possible it happened, but you don't remember? It's possible, but I do not remember.
Well, that's not very credible.
Do you recall the security guard at some point in time actually filming you as the two of you interacted? No. Do you recall Jason Gonay approaching you after you had this interaction with the security guard that you flipped off? Yes. I'm not sure who this is. And do you recall he approached you to talk with you about the exchange you had with the security guard? Yes. And do you recall Mr. Gonay expressing the sentiment to you that he thought you needed to calm down? I remember having a discussion with Mr. Gonay about the situation and to move away from the security. He was told, get away from these people. Move away from the security.
Move away. You move away.
Yeah. So you recall Mr. Gonay asking you to move away from the Gilmore security guard? He goes, yes. Did he explain to you why he was making that request of you? No. Do you recall him expressing words to you the effect that he thought you needed to calm down? No. Do you recall Mr. Gonay telling you anything like you need to take a breather? No. Do you recall effectively Mr. Gonay asked you to leave the security guard alone? Yes. After Mr. Gonay, so this is 15 minutes. This is right before he got on set. So he just gets a dressing down by these security people about we're the boss, this is our property, and he walks on set pissed off, and the first person in his eye line is that poor woman that he runs off of.
Yeah.
And after Mr. Gonay intervened, you left the security guard alone, correct? After you left him alone, is that correct? I walked away. And you walked away at the request of Mr. Gonay. I don't know who he is. Yes. Would you say that as you were walking away from this encounter with the security guard who you flipped off, that you were at least a little bit agitated? I can't say. Well, do you typically flip people off? You don't know if you're not agitated? No. So you would agree based on your conduct that looking back in time, you were a little bit aggravated at that point in time. No. Did you know the security guard? No. How much time would you estimate transpired between the time you flipped off the security guard and then you walked away at the request of Mr. Gonay? It would have been until you got your exchange with Mr. Depp. It would have been 15 minutes. Do you recall between the interaction with the security guard and the interaction with Mr. Depp, having an interaction with any homeless individuals that were on the set? No. There were no homeless individuals on the set. So it's your testimony, Mr. Brooks, that at the time of the incident between yourself and Mr. Depp, there were no homeless individuals in the area of the set? Yes. And you're 100% certain of that? 100% certain. What makes you 100% certain of that? It's a closed set. And what does that mean for somebody who doesn't know your business? That means that anybody who is entering the area of our filming, which is between, so apparently he's saying that 100% there was no homeless, and yet Emma Dankoff said that she saw Johnny meeting with them and talking with them and giving them money and gifts. Mm-hmm. So they were clearly in or around the set that night.
Gee, I wonder whose job it was to keep homeless people off the set. Would you think it might have been the set manager's job?
Right. Anyway, they're going to get into his injuries. Well, there's been 3, there's been 2. So do you want to know the very first? I'm confused. So I think they're asking about his past accidents and stuff.
Yeah, his past surgeries and stuff.
Yeah, excluding recent period after the accident, during which he recovered from multiple neck surgeries. So do you want to know after that accident or after my first one? So we got a couple going on now. How many accidents have you had? So I've been in 2 accidents. Okay, tell me about the first one. The first one, I was rear-ended on that night of April 1st, 2011, riding home from work, last day of filming a Sony pilot. Riding home on a motorcycle? No, driving my car. Did you suffer any injuries from that accident? Yes. What sort of neck, wrist, and back? Did you have surgeries as a result of the accident? Eventually, yes. Are you still suffering symptoms from those injuries that you suffered from that accident? Yes. What symptoms are you suffering from today that you attribute to that accident? Well, it's all related to my numbness in my feet, my hands, my loss of balance, and the fire going down the right arm and pain in my neck. I think somebody who's in pain all the time is not going to be in a good mood all the time either. Did you have spinal surgery as a result of the accident? Yes, I had cervical laminectomy, but that was roughly 4.5 years later. So after the accident, he had the surgery 5 years later. And did you have the cervical laminectomy in September 2015? What is a cervical laminectomy? In layman's term, it's when it's your nerve passageway and it's where your nerve goes through. Well, this is what it looks like, and then it's normal, and then it's what it looks like when it's pinched. It's like degenerative stenosis, and it narrows, and it completely pinched off to where I couldn't feel my body. Or barely walk. So in layman's term, the inside of your spinal column pinched on the nerves and completely shut it off. I was very close to being paralyzed. Did you have another accident April 1st? November 2017. Tell me about that accident. I was driving to meet a producer for my next job commercial, and a lady downtown ran a light, turned left in front of me, and I T-boned her. Did you sustain injuries in an accident? I did. What sorts? Again, neck, back, wrist, re-injuring everything. This was November 2017. Yes. So that would have been several months, roughly 6 months after the incident on the set of City of Lies, which was the second incident you had. Yes. So I think that's interesting about doing long-term injury pain, that he's had another whole accident after the movie.
Yeah.
So did your pain and spinal related issues become worse as a result of the second accident? They returned. Okay. Did you ultimately have surgery? Were you hospitalized after the November 27th accident? I was not hospitalized, but I went to seek immediate care. How long were you under medical care following that accident? I was on medical care continuously through May. So I assume he means May of that year, 2018. And you're under continuous medical care for your spinal condition during this period. Yes. You were able to work during this period? No. This is important. Wait,
Because he was blackballed, I thought.
I thought he was backboard. Now he's being disabled. And in the
Yeah.
interrogatory response, were you referring to a recent period where you were recovering from multiple neck surgeries? Were you referring to that period of November 2017 through May of 2018? I had to check because at the time, if I was recovering from multiple neck surgeries, that would be right after my second surgery. So that would have been August 2016, correct? Yes. So if I'm clear on this, the response refers to multiple neck surgeries. Did you have more than 2 neck surgeries? No. So it's fair to say that between November 2017 and May of 2018, even if you had wanted to, you couldn't have worked during that period. Well, I could have worked. Wait, did you make any effort to work during that period? Yes. What efforts did you make during that period? Well, I was sent a script from a previous producer. And were you hired on that project? Well, I was sent a script for Netflix by Bruce Gillies, who is actually the line producer of Labyrinth. And you weren't hired on that project, correct? Ultimately, I was not hired. Okay. Were you actively seeking out work opportunities after the November 27th accident? Well, I was looking for work while I was on recovering from disability, doing my physical therapy, getting ready to go back to work. Okay. So at some point, did your doctor or team of doctors clear you to return to work activities after November of 2017? Yes, they cleared me to go back to work sometime in May of 2018. So yes. So prior to May, between November 2017 and May 2018, you were under doctor's orders that you should not be able to go to work. Well, no, I was under a doctor's treatment. Did your doctor tell you they didn't recommend you return to work from November 2017 to May of 2018? No. When you say you were cleared to return to work in May of 2018, was there some impediment to returning to work based on medical conditions prior to the clearance? Well, I was still in pain, but would have been able to continue. I mean, I would have gone to work if there was a job available because it's more important to work to support my family. I've worked in pain before. Did you seek other job opportunities between November 2017 to May 2018, other than the one with Mr. Gillies? I was sent a script for The Tax Collector, another movie, but I did not get it. Let me back up a minute. Returning to work issues from the day after. Let's pick April 13th, the day after the incident. Do you have that date in mind? So my focus now is on April 13th going forward. Do you have that timeline in mind? Yes. That would have been the day after the incident. That's true. Focusing on that time period, would you agree with me that during the entire time period, you have been physically and mentally able to perform work if work's available for you? Yes. And there's been no impediment to your working from any injuries you suffered from anything Mr. Depp did to you that would have prevented you from working in that period. Would you agree with that? That's correct. And so the only impediment to your working that you attribute to Mr. Depp has to do with the fact that various employment opportunities ultimately didn't pan out for you, correct? Yes. And that may or may not be because you've been blackballed or that the potential employers otherwise didn't want to touch you because of the publicity on this case. I don't see it that way.
I don't see it that way. I'm sure you don't. I'm
do
sure your incentives are not aligned with that way of seeing things.
Yeah. Well, how do you see it? I see it that I'm not getting work because of the incident. Okay. But you agree, however, that from April 13th forward, if work was available, you were physically and emotionally able to do it. And I did because he had worked. Okay, so no physical or emotional injuries that suffered prevented you from working from April 13th forward. Yes. So the extent there's been some impediment to your working after April 13th, it has something to do with something besides any injuries you suffered from this incident. The incident with Mr. Depp. I believe my lack of work is directly related to the incident. Okay, I want to distinguish the incident from your injuries, and then we'll take it one step at a time. Are there any physical injuries you attribute to the incident that had prevented you from working? No. Are there any emotional injuries you attribute to this incident that prevent you from working from April 13, 2017 forward? Forward to now or forward to Perception was you had no difficulty finding work opportunities up through your November 2017 car accident. I was working. I had jobs. I did some jobs.
So April to November of 2017, he was working.
Yeah. Available to work, able to work, physically, mentally able to work, and was getting jobs.
Then he got in a car accident, got more surgeries that he would have worked through, and his doctor cleared him later in May, but his doctor never actually said he shouldn't work before that.
Right.
That's his story. Okay.
Right. Oh,
Making sure I'm on the right page here.
Yeah. And the fact that he did get turned down for some jobs. Well, don't we all? We don't always get everything we go for. So was there any jobs you sought in that period rejected or turned down because anybody told you it related to the incident with Mr. Depp? Not yet. When's the first time you can ever recall hearing from any source that any job opportunity you didn't get was in any way tied to the incident? After I came back from disability in 2018. So that would have been in May of 2018. Yes. And that's the first time you recall hearing any source say that there was an issue with the incident that impacted your employability. Russell Bertolino, who is the Teamster Local 399 transportation coordinator, tried to get me on one of his shows, and he was told that I had been blacklisted by Depp. Sorry, I just don't see Johnny doing this. He moves on to his projects. He doesn't mess with this stuff. Anyway, so would you agree the first time you had any difficulty?
By Depp could mean something as ambiguous as Johnny Depp mentioned this guy had a crazy freak out on the last day of shooting. Maybe has a little bit of a temper problem.
Right. But also this is after I'm pretty sure this is after the May 2018, the New York Post already reported.
Yeah.
And they would have reported Johnny's side saying, no, he was accosting a homeless woman. So would you agree the first time you had any difficulty in securing employment opportunities tied in any way the incident came after the incident got published in the New York Post? Yes. Do you have any reason to testify that Mr. Depp did anything to cause the New York Post to publish that article? No. Do you have any reason to believe that Mr. Depp made an effort to publicize anything about the incident? No. Putting aside Mr. Bodolini, I want to focus on potential employers. Has any potential employer that you've sought work for ever told you directly that Mr. Depp had blackballed you? No. Has any potential employer ever told you they were not willing to hire you because of anything having to do with the incident? Yes. Who told you that? Well, Russell Bertolino. Sorry. He wasn't your employer, correct? That's correct. And I want to be clear that I'm asking you, I understand Mr. Bertolino said some things to you. Yes. And did Mr. Gillies? Yes. I want to focus on what you personally have communicated from potential employers. Do you have that in mind? Yes. Have you ever yourself had a potential employer tell you one way or the other whether the incident had anything to do with your employability? I'm running late on you, Andrea. Are you okay?
I am. My dogs are going to start making noise here. They're already staring at me, getting hungry. So
yeah, we should be pretty close. We got one more thing with the therapist.
Yeah.
Nobody will tell me that. Has any employer told you through today that your employability has been negatively impacted by anything that Johnny Depp has done or said? No one's told me that. Would you agree with me that the source of your belief about your employment difficulties ultimately is based on what Mr. Bertolino and Mr. Gillies have shared with you? He goes, yes. Now, Gillies was on site. He already knows the stunt that Rocky pulled.
Yeah.
Are there any other persons besides them that said things that you were unemployable to the incident? He goes, yes. Who else? An associate named Cecil Gentry. When you say an associate, where is Mr. Gentry associate? He's a production designer. And what has Mr. Gentry told you anything about your employability and the incident? He has tried to hire me twice on shows that he's been involved in. Production designers are generally responsible for the location department. They were Blumhouse productions. The first one was a Hulu show, Into the Dark, where he wanted me to come in and do this show. And that was met with no's. And the no's that was met with, did any source say the no's were, and we're getting a little, we may be into another one. Did you share with you what any other person said to him about why the answer came back no? He told me because it was of the incident. Now, this again could just be from the article explaining the incident, because again, Johnny said it was because of a homeless woman.
Yeah.
Did he tell you what caused him to come to that belief? The producer told him. Did he say who the producer was? He would not tell me. Did he say what exactly the producer had said to him? He said that I'm not hireable right now. Did he say the producer says you were not? So again, anybody who's hired him, and this is what Johnny went through, they're going to be attracting all kinds of press.
Yeah.
So here's Chris. So these guys are brothers. And Miguel, we know, was already mentioned. Chris, so this is another witness he's claiming. He's a good friend of yours, correct? Yeah, he's a friend of mine. And Miguel's also a friend. He's a work friend. Miguel has stayed at your house on numerous occasions, correct? Miguel has stayed at my house when we have work on the west side. He stays on the east side. So he stays at my house when there's an early call for whenever he needs to go. So he doesn't have to fight traffic and save an hour. And this happens on numerous occasions. Yes. Would you say you're a welcome house guest? He's a welcome house guest at your house? Absolutely. In fact, you were the responsible for first getting Miguel his union card. Correct. So they're trying to do some bias on his witnesses.
Yeah.
And you are the jobs listed. So he's listed all these union jobs. He goes, yes. How do you get about this getting report? Because he can print off his motion picture, all of his jobs he can print off. So they go through and they say, let me see. It starts from an entry on January 21st. Oh, yeah, it's on this page. I want to go through this faster. So it looks like he's been working. If you scroll down, you can see it runs chronologically. Yes. So you were employed at this point between October 27th and September 2018. Oh, yeah, right. That's right. Sorry. So that's where the accident happened. That was my last commercial before my accident on November 17th. So, yeah, that's when the cat crash happened. And so the lack of employment between this date, October 8th, and November, or until that was due to the accident you suffered. Is that right? Because, yes. So they're really trying to quantify his availability to work and his physical capability to work.
And he's just going back and forth all over the place with this in his answers.
Mm-hmm. Okay, now I want to work further back in time. Let's look at the entry 1, 2, 3, 6, or 7 up from the bottom of the page. It's got the last good film production U.S. entry. Do you see that? Because, yes, that's City of Lies, where the incident between yourself and Mr. Depp occurred, correct? And so this report then reflect that roughly 2 months after that incident on the City of Lies set, you got employed on the Stars Por Vida productions. Is that right? Yes. And you held that job. It was a 3-week shoot. Okay. Then you got a gap between the middle of July and early September. And then you picked up another job, correct? That was Homeward Bound Productions. Yes, it was. And then after that, you had a slight gap. And then you picked up a job in October on the Corporate Management Solutions matter. Yep. So you would have to agree with me that during this period, you were working on the Stars Por Vida all the way through Corporate Management Solutions, that you were able to find work and perform the work that if it was available. Yes. So from your experience, you didn't have any issues getting jobs. Correct? Yeah. The problems rose later. They came at a later point. However, I was always questioned about it. But questions or not, you were able to get the jobs you wanted, at least your Corporate Management Solutions job that you took in November of 2017. Correct? Yes. And then right about that time, you had your car accident. Correct. Yes. And you were laid up for an extended period of time due to the accident. Yes. Let's work our way backwards. If we go to the next page, it's got 2016 entries on it. Did you see this film? I haven't got there yet. Okay. So he's going through his paperwork. All right. So when I got back off of disability for good films, so he had been on disability before Labyrinth. I was working and ready to go. When you say you got back off disability for good films, do you mean May of 2018? No, I mean February of 2017. Okay, you were on disability prior to February? I was on disability from November of 2017 to July of 2018. He can't get his disability straight. Were you actually drawing state disability payments during that period? Yes. And in July 2018, did you then get a medical clearance to return to work? Yes, but I was available to return to work previously from that. Whether you were available or not, you continued to draw disability payments from the state, correct? Yes. So he's saying he couldn't get work because of debt, but now he's saying, well, I was getting disability payments.
Yeah. So were you doing disability fraud?
Now, you claim that you suffered emotional injuries as a result of the incident, which Mr. Depp. I'd like to ask you, can you describe for me the emotional injuries you suffered? I've lost my confidence in myself. I am unsure about my abilities to continue doing my job with strangers. I've been depressed, withdrawn. Anything else? Distraught. When did distant? I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead. Distraught, distant. Almost sounds like you read it out of a textbook. When did you first begin to experience any of these symptoms after the incident? The first bit of it being bothered by it was the constant barrage of everybody who knew me or found out and was asking about the incident. And when did this happen? Oh, it started right after the original incident. And then it kind of stayed at, an even keeled pace. And then once the New York Post story came out, it became really emotionally difficult for me because I did not want any publicity. What sort of emotional difficulties were you experiencing after the New York Post? Normal stress of life. So did you have any additional emotional trauma or injuries that you attributed to the incident that manifested themselves at any point after May or before May 2018? I was definitely depressed about the incident, but I moved on. I'm a masculine male, and it's your job to shrug things off and move on and do your job. So I continue to try to, move on, get jobs, move forward, work in the industry. I've got a few more years until my retirement. Just taking care of my family, working, and what's physically better. It's time to work. So prior to May 2018, would you agree that you essentially carried on business as usual? Yeah, I was carrying on business as usual, but I was carrying the emotional baggage of the incident with me. But you were able to carry that and perform your work functions. Oh, yes. And that remained the case at least through May of 2018, correct? Correct. And did that situation at some point, or let me ask a different question. At some point, did your emotional trauma become more severe? Yes. And was that after the New York Post article? It started becoming more so then. And what happened in your life that caused your emotional trauma to worsen at that time? Oh, the barrage of phone calls, emails, texts from people all over the country that I knew, friends, work associates, school people. Hey, is this you? Did this happen? What happened? Got an email from Thailand from a producer saying, hey, is this my Rocky? Just all over the world. It was world news. Did the fact that it would get published worldwide cause you to suffer emotional trauma? Huge, huge embarrassment. And what about the cause you suffered? Emotional trauma? Well, I didn't want this to come out. I walked away from the incident, and now here it is, like the top news story. When you say you walked away from the incident, what do you mean? I mean that after the incident, I'd walked away. 2 days after the incident, I received a call from a reporter, from the Hollywood Reporter. Her name was Anita Bush, and she called me saying that she heard about an incident and wanted to do a story about abuse on Hollywood sets between higher-ups and crew members. And I just told her that I'm not that person. I don't want to make a spotlight of it. I want to walk away from it. I've got a few more years until retirement. I just want to work. And this would be bad. So when you said you walked away from the incident, what you meant was you didn't want to engage with the reporter. I didn't want to engage with any reporters. Yeah, I didn't want to engage with any reporters. Now, at some point, your interactions changed. Your intentions changed. So it became public. It came out in the public. It embarrassed me. It just brought back childhood stuff that was very distressful. Are there any specific people that you can identify today with, encourage you to pursue litigation against Mr. Depp, and I'll include your wife, your counsel on this list? I would have to think about it. Various members of the location community, the production community. Now, you were seeking help from Terry Brigham. This is, back to the therapist, well before the incident occurred, correct? Correct. When did you first seek out help from Ms. Brigham? 2014 or 15. And why did you first start seeing her? I was having anxiety attacks, and it was related to my childhood. What sort of anxiety attacks were you having that caused you to seek out help from Mr. Brigham? I was having panic attacks, and I spoke to a friend about it, and he suggested I see Terry. I'll show you what we're going to have. So they have, I guess they got notes from the doctor. They got something he ticked off when he got there. So a period of therapy, and we went through it, and she gave me the exercises, and I started doing better, and it stopped seeing her. Are you currently experiencing any of those symptoms where you checked boxes here on this form when you first visited Ms. Brigham? I'm sorry. I want to focus. Yeah, today, right. Are there any boxes that you checked back when you visited Ms. Brigham? Are there any of the matters you checked here matters where you're now again having symptoms? Looking for that page. I think he's in a panic now, realizing they've got something on him. Okay, which ones? Okay, so he's looking at what's checked. Sadness and crying spells, socially isolated. I've added, you can add appetite and weight loss, insomnia, difficulty having fun, nervousness, jittery, excessive worrying, and definitely easily distracted. So he's reaffirming these boxes he's checked. And fidgety, yes. You skipped over irritable and temper outbursts. Are you having issues with that? Not particularly. And his lawyer goes, well, your lawyer is. And he goes, well, I'm glad I'm contagious. So he's,
oh man, you do not want your lawyer dunking on you in the middle of your deposition.
oh my goodness. If you move back in the packet, here's a nut. So he's got irritable and temper outburst issues. If you move back in the packet here, another 2 pages, you see there's a signature, client signature, yep, and your signature, yep, you signed it. You filled this out form August 2014. This is before the movie. Yes, it does. How long after the incident with Mr. Depp was it you first began experiencing any of these symptoms that you just told me you're currently experiencing? I would say these experiences, again, started coming up after the New York Post. They were always, and they were there. They were dormant probably, but once the Post article came out, I started having these feelings again. So in terms of the timeline, as you sit here today, your recollection would be these symptoms that you just described for me, that you want money from Mr. Depp for, by the way, plugging that in. They manifested themselves mainly after the New York Post got published. Yes. And how long after the article got published that you reached out to Terry Brigham? I don't remember. Well, let's look at the 3rd page of the file. We can ask her these questions as well, but it looks like when you go to the bottom of the page that the last visit reflected in her notes before the incident, this is before the incident, would have been July 2015. And the next visit appears to show September 2018. And have your visits with her in the past few weeks helped with any of your symptoms? So this is only September 2018. So he hasn't been there going there, but long after the incident. She's given me hypnosis exercise and it seems to have helped a little bit. Okay, is there a name for that exercise? It's hypnosis of a tape. She indicated that her recommended future course of treatment for you would be to keep seeing her. Has she indicated for you how long she thinks you'll need to continue to see her and resolve your problems, your emotional complaints that you attribute to this incident? No. Do you have any idea, as you sit here today, how long you think you'll need to seek assistance from her regarding the trauma you're claiming in this case? I plan on seeing her for a little bit of time. Okay. Can you refine that for us in any more detail at this period in time? Sorry, somebody snuck through there. Until I'm feeling better. And this hasn't given you any sort of prediction or game plan on how long she thinks it's going to be. No, she did not. Has Ms. Brink recommended you seek any sort of treatment for your emotional injuries from other professionals? No. We previously marked in this case as Exhibit 12 your responses to Form Interrogatory Set 1. Let me, with counsel's permission, I'm going to show you the binder. It's not an official court reporter one. Okay, so he's putting out the exhibit to them and it says you can take a look at it. Let's see. I think we go forward. We know you saw her September 26, 2018. And you told me that even though it's not on her records here, you have a recollection of seeing her in 2017? Yes. Did she charge you a fee for the 27th visit? I believe she did. Do you know what the fee would have been at that time? Between $150 and $175. Okay. I don't know. It might have, I don't know. So, there's no record of him seeing her before September 2018, but he thinks he's trying to think he did.
Yeah.
So in the past few weeks, you've seen her 2 more times, correct? Yes. So to recap, it's your best recollection as you sit here today that you've seen Miss Brigham a total of 4 times since the incident. Yes. If we round her charges up to $200 per each of those times, you would agree with me that you've incurred a total of $800 in costs to be treated by Miss Brigham City of Lies incident for that incident. Yes. Do you have any other out-of-pocket expenses that you've incurred? No. I need to finish. I appreciate the quick answer, but let me finish my question. Sorry. Do you have any other pocket expenses you've incurred for any reason that you attribute to the incident besides the $800 you've paid? Lawyers' fees. They don't count. So putting aside lawyer fees or cost of litigation in the case, would you agree with me that your total out-of-pocket expenses that you attribute to the incident as of today are $800 or less? Yes. I have no further questions for this witness.
So So now we know why Johnny moved to have it brought down to the limited jurisdiction amount. I mean, $800 in actual damages is pretty insubstantial. Now, having said that, for an intentional tort, he can ask for both pain and suffering as well, and potentially also punitives. So I suppose that's the reason why the judge is saying, well, um, we're not going to say he's precluded as a matter of law from being able to prove
Right.
that. But it's just as a practical matter, in these types of cases, when they are negotiating settlements and stuff, typically what you're looking at is you're looking at what are your actual damages that you have incurred, and then pain and suffering is typically some percentage of that. Rarely is it up to 100% of that, but it could be. So, using that type of framework, Johnny's team is basically saying, look, he might get $1,600 out of this in the best case scenario. There's no way this should be in a general jurisdiction court. And I can understand that position, but I can also understand why legally the judge would say, well, we've got to leave it up to the jury.
Yep. So what we do know is he was contacted soon after by a reporter. Mm-hmm. So it was known. Mm-hmm. And I think something happened after Bloom and TMG and Rolling Stone that a reporter said, oh, I remember this old story. And the New York Post reported on it. And it was after that he decided to file suit. It was after that he incurred this emotional strain. And they're also going to argue, like, you chose to file the lawsuit. So any coverage over the lawsuit, it's not our fault. It's not our emotional cost.
Yeah.
So I remember reading that. I don't see any super chats to hit up to, and I know you're rushed. But yeah, please, you close it up, and I'll do the best I can with the questions because I know you have to run.
I can have like 5 more minutes if we got some we can run through.
Just basically, it's $800. I'm not sure how he wants over $25,000. The judge said, well, I can't determine his future issues.
Yeah, that's the other issue is because he is entitled to make a claim for future medical damages. And so, if it turns out a jury thinks he needs an entire lifetime of therapy to, get over this trauma that Johnny Depp inflicted on him, that could be enough of an amount to, I suppose, justify getting it over the $25,000 limit.
Yeah. Oh my God, this has to be televised just for the entertainment value. I will let you know that there has been several requests already, and they're all denied. So that's the only reason I popped that up. Yeah. Oh. We were having great discussion while we were talking, and that's really nice. And I love to see that. I just don't see anything, a question that we have to answer. Camille is going to take Rocky down. I think the most important thing that I took away from this is he's still working. He was still getting work. And granted, if it was after the New York Post came out and Johnny said, hey, this is my side of the story, I went up to him to yell at him because rightfully so, I was trying to protect this person he was screaming at. He's trying to skip that entire part that I just walked up and for no reason, Johnny started yelling at me. Then we find out, well, he's known to have been yelling at people.
Yeah. Well, that's going to be probably the most valuable thing from my perspective, reading through this deposition, is that interaction with the security guard 15 minutes before. I mean, the fact that he's admitting that he's the one who was in an altercation that was heated, where he's flipping people off, and in such a short time frame, but then he wants to flip it to, oh, suddenly I'm back on set and it's my job to be, calm and responsible and keeping everything within professional, limits. It's just a major credibility problem. That is the type of thing, of course, the jury has to sort out. A judge can't make that decision like, oh, you're not credible as a matter of law. That's why we have juries to decide those things anyway. But that is what I would expect. I mean, if I were Camille, that's the main thing I'm going to be highlighting is,
Yeah. Yeah.
Your whole account of how this thing unfolded is very difficult to reconcile with the sequence of events that even you yourself are admitting took place. And
Yeah.
that's before we even get to, Emma Danhoff and what type of evidence they have and stuff.
Yeah. I don't know if they've looked to see if he's suit happy with other people. He's had a lot of surgery and somebody's paid for all of that. It could have been his insurance company. Sometimes insurance companies will force suits, but he was on disability. He was not able to work if he's accepting disability payments. So that it took a little while for Randall to dig that out over the course of this deposition, but that finally came out that, he cannot work if he's on disability until he gets cleared.
You're double dipping. If you're getting compensated for not being able to work, then you're not able to work. And if you're taking that money while you are able to work, that's potentially problematic. So
yeah, I like this. The normal stresses of life.
Yeah.
The normal stresses of life. That was pretty common. Poor Johnny. Yeah, this was, I really think this is something that they thought is a money grab. After all he's been going through, let's do this, Adam. He'll probably be ready to settle. And Johnny has always taken the stance. If I settle with you, I'm just inviting more of these.
Yes.
Which brings me to the question. I know you're gonna have to run. This is the one I want to ask you. There are rumors he might want to settle. He just came off of a fantastic win. And what happens? There's still a massive divide about, believe all women. Who cares if he was innocent? He should take one for the team, for these other women so that survive, keep coming forward. Paul McCartney's being attacked because he has a video of Johnny in his concert, which he's had for years and years and years. I saw it years ago. So having said that, with this great divide, what do you think about him wanting to go to trial with this now with a jury?
I mean, from my perspective, I'm not going to blame him if he wants to settle this thing just to make it go away as a nuisance, because it's going to cost him more to pay his lawyers to go through this trial than this claim is potentially worth. And that's the whole leverage that a nuisance lawsuit has, is the fact that you can drop, $5,000 on this guy is now, do the math in my head, 5 or 6 times his actual damages. And if that's enough to make him go away, he's paying his lawyers, 100 times that amount to get the thing to go through trial and get him vindicated. So that's the whole reason these nuisance lawsuits work, is they use the cost of litigation as leverage. So
Right.
I don't blame him if he doesn't want to spend another $100,000 to go through a trial in LA over, a de minimis claim.
And what's the risk of a couple people getting on the jury that are very big on believe all women and think they have a chance to get a pound of flesh from Johnny now? You've got through.
Yeah, you just never know. I mean, that is the thing. A jury trial is always a little bit of a crapshoot. You can, of course, do your best to sort through people and their prejudices and things like that. But it's just a fairly risky process. No matter, under the best of circumstances, it's just very hard to get around that. So yes, there's no guarantee that if he takes it to trial, he's going to win it. Now, in California, he only needs a majority. They do not have the unanimity requirement that Virginia does. So that is helpful for him. He would need, quite a few pro-Ambers to give a verdict for Rocky.
I think I was reading 9 out of 12. I think California still set at 12.
I think probably in this general jurisdiction court, it's set at 12. I don't know if it's 9 out of 12 or 7 out of 12.
I'm checking the website just to see if there's been an update since we've been talking. The only updates I've seen have been media requests, and it's going to be denied. It's absolutely denied. The next thing we have coming up is the limines. So guess what Brooks filed for limiting? The argument with that production company should not be heard. Should not become, and not only was it, sorry about X, but it was recorded. So Film LA recorded that whole incident.
Yeah.
And I think that's why he was fired, and why they said, they didn't say don't sue us. I'm sure it said, I'm sure he has an arbitration clause.
Yeah.
Which is what they're trying to explain to him, saying, you can't sue us unless you do this route. But so that was in there. He is trying to get that suppressed.
Yeah.
And Depp has 5 limines. 1, no, my drug and alcohol should not be brought in. We'll see how they rule on that, because it was a big part of Amber's trial. Amber and that trial should not be brought in. Other prior litigation should not be brought in. Bifurcation was a big one, and releasing his financial accounts. And then the 5th one is what stopped this case. And that's where Rocky wants his therapist to be an expert witness, the treating therapist.
Yeah.
So that started filing things under seal. And that's when the judge says, we need to reschedule. We need to postpone this trial. So I never got the ruling on that because it's sealed. So that's what's coming up. So Andrea, I so appreciate you staying way over time for me and your dog. I can see you petting your dog. They must be ready outside.
He's so hungry.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Thanks, Laura. I'm going to head out now.
Yes, thank you. And check out her. I'll let you go because I know you got to run. But check out Andrea's channel. She's been doing some great deep dives on the testimonies from the Depp trial. And not that it's something new, but it's really almost like a boxing match about, for example, Isaac against Elaine in different parts of the testimony. Who won out on this one? She's going to be doing some deep dives regarding that. So her channel is very cool in a very different way. So that's really awesome. I haven't seen any super chats, and I haven't seen anything that's just questions other than discussions. Yeah, held no to settle. I got to tell you, I agree it's a money grab, but sometimes money grab is cheaper than the money he'd have to pay out to his lawyers to clear his name after he's just been in the courtroom for 6 weeks. It's a 6-year battle that he's finally won, and he just wants to enjoy that and move on. No, not typically. Typically, you're not, unless they file for it. They can file for it afterwards if they feel it was a frivolous lawsuit to start with. Well, we don't know. He said he was able to work, but he didn't get the work, so he just continued to collect disability. Usually disability would be less than what you could make, and he just kept collecting disability until he wanted to work again, I guess. Yeah, so I'm glad you all came. It's an interesting deposition. It's not, it's a joke. It's farce. I mean, he doesn't remember getting hit. He didn't respond to getting hit. He doesn't know why Johnny yelled at him. Oh, well, we have these witnesses. We have these photos. When you got hit, how did you react? Well, Emma has all the photos. There was absolutely no reaction. We talked about this before. Emma's script supervisor, her role of taking photos is when they break and come back, she can sit, look at her photos and say, okay, you had your tie this way. You had a pen behind your ear. No, you had a pen in your hand. No, you had a coffee cup in your hand. I mean, she has to make sure everything is completely congruous going through every shot after a break. So she's very much aware when she saw this going down, taking pictures, and I forget how many they were. There was a lot. That you will never see him bend over in pain or react in any way, even though it's not a video. So I think that's really good. Maybe he should settle. I mean, I really think there's a risk with the jury. I'm amazed at the backlash for him winning. Yeah, that nobody will accept her own audio tapes that she lied. This is not about all victims. This is only about Johnny and Amber. So, yeah, new evidence. No new evidence will be allowed in the appeal. It's all legal. The legal ruling or the rulings the judge made, did they adhere to the proper law? So it's just going to be really paperwork. Nothing new is going to come in other than what was already submitted that Judge Ascarati found to be inadmissible. So that's the only evidence. There's nothing brand new that can come in. That deposition was eye-opening, isn't it? Yeah, if he settles, more will come out, maybe. But God, have you walked in his shoes? Can you imagine what this guy's been through? Yeah, Brittany's been through hell. Look what she went through. Now, that wasn't a jury, but it's always a risk. It's always a risk. Sorry if, guys, you were inundated there. Yeah, good argument to pay him instead of a lot more to the lawyers. I understand Rocky worked with Depp before. I don't think they ever remembered it, but it was way early on. Oh. With Marlon Brando. I can't remember the name of the movie. Who's paying his lawyers? I asked Andrea this question the last time. She thinks typically in these cases he's having to pay. But I kind of equate it to kind of a car accident situation where lawyers can take it on contingency, where they only get paid from a settlement. And she had mixed reviews on that. So I guess we really don't know. Yeah, I think he's been screwed enough. He needs to go live his life. Yeah. And remember, Paul McCartney, continued to show this. He went through this himself with false accusations. Oh, yes, secret. I forget who I made mods. It went through by too fast, but thank you so much for your help in getting rid of this stuff. I was trying to read with right eye and left eye on the chat. Yeah, this is hard. This is a hard call. It's not so black and white. If you steal in the U.S. and is deemed ridiculous, can you be liable for the costs? Depp would have to countersue that this is a frivolous lawsuit. This was a frivolous lawsuit. And in that way, he can try. What he was suing, I showed in the beginning, he was suing about 6 people, and then Does 1 through 50. These Joes are, if in the course of discovery we find other people were a party to this, made decisions, made recommendations, we're going to pull them into the lawsuit. And in fact, he did the opposite. He dropped everybody except for Johnny and his production company. No, Amber's been dropped from this list. I see no reason for Adam to be pulled in. The judge is a woman, I believe. Yes, she is. I'm looking for these. No one should be honest. Yeah, I think they would have looked into prior lawsuits that didn't come out in the documents we have. That probably came out in these interlocutory questions and answers that get sent back and forth that aren't made public. But I'm sure it's been asked if he's claimed any kind of injuries in the past. They had something they knew to ask him about. So, I'm going on. Yeah, how about that trauma he inflicted on the homeless woman? I don't think they ever found her, which is not unusual if, as Johnny said, and Emma testified to in her statement that she saw Johnny talking with the homeless people. She saw him giving out money and gifts. I imagine since Rocky waited so long to make this filing that they had no way of tracking her down. What else have I got? Yeah, too bad it's not. I mean, really. Okay, we covered that one. I'm sorry I was so late in getting to them, but I knew Andrea had such a limited time and I wanted to get to the end of it. I think she was afraid to get me to stop questioning. $800 for listening to his deposition, pain and suffering. Yes, I'd like that too, for having to read it. Did JD admit to hitting him? Absolutely not. Johnny has denied any physical contact with him. He admits that he raised his voice, and we'll be covering Johnny's deposition next time. He admits that he yelled at him. He admits that he berated him, rightfully so, in protection of this woman. But no, he steadfastly denies that he hit him. I don't know how transcripts work in Los Angeles. I know a couple of people who live there that are going to try and go. We're going to be limited to what media feels like reporting, sadly. So it's going to be biased. It just is. You're very welcome. I know Andrea likes coming on. She likes doing this kind of stuff. I'm looking for more questions. No, the jury does not have to be unanimous. The last I read was 12. California was still using 12, and 9 had to agree for the majority. But with the beer bug, I think it was at the judge's discretion if they could use a smaller jury, say 5 out of 7. But last I heard, it's still 9 out of 12. This man only seek therapy, just like Amber Heard. Yeah, exactly. 4 times total, $800 total. And hasn't seen her. I mean, he's going to have to bring up that he's seen her since, but this was going to trial. His deposition was September 2019. It was going to trial October 2019. So we'll see if any updated testimony that he's still continuing to get treatment. I'm sure his lawyers are saying you better get your butt in there every week. Yeah. I mean, it's really a shame that it really was pressure from the press that he brought this lawsuit. Or I don't know who this Duffy is. It never came in. Whether he's a lawyer who's trying to take his case, or whether he was someone saying, look, you have grounds to sue. This is a celebrity. He'll pay you big bucks. Just take him to court. I think we should have collected the $800 and told him to bugger off. Seriously. The moment Rocky realized he's duped into bringing this lawsuit just so it could bump up Amber's. Yeah, and I think they were really hoping. Let's face it, Johnny's lawsuit against Amber was very difficult, very high stakes. It was very doubtful he was going to win on one, let alone all three. Bringing a defamation case in the United States is very hard, and he won on all three, and I'm sure they did not expect that. Thank you. No, it's interrogatories. Interlocutory is the appeal that Elaine made. Remember, they tried to get their plea in bar. It was denied. So they did an interlocutory appeal to have it heard right away, a second appeal heard right away, which they are now going to appeal again. The interrogatories are the questions that go back and forth in writing that they have to answer under oath when they return them back. I think, oh my God, I think Amber Heard had about 19 of them, 19 sets. Dr. Curry could, I wish they were bringing Dr. Curry on. I think they had, again, this happened so long ago, they had a different expert lined up. And we'll be going over the witness and the exhibit list. Yeah, I have no idea. Adam said that there was some kind of influence he believed that could have been influencing Rocky's decision. I don't know. Whoop. I think, I'm not sure. I'm going to go back. I've been heading up. I'm going to go back to the bottom and see if we've got some new questions, because I'm not seeing anything up here right now. I'm seeing a lot of great discussion with you guys. Yeah, wonder if his therapist has notes. It's going to be interesting. Well, I tell you what showed up was he hadn't been seeing the doctor's therapist as long as he claimed he was, and that got caught out. And we have Camille is awesome. She's obviously going to be in this. Look at that, I'll let her know. Okay. Please subscribe. I really appreciate it if you click subscribe and share. This live, this will remain on the channel, and I appreciate all your help. I guess you can understand this deposition was 117 pages, and I pay per page. So that was quite expensive. These documents from California, they charge for. I paid them all out of my own pocket. And doing the best I can right now. I got monetized. Yay. So if you're, let the ads fly. That helps. And super chats help. I'm going to say goodbye, guys. I've been on here a little over 2 hours. Can we get non-subscriber mods mode? I'm so new at this. I was so thrilled I can get anybody on here real quick. Waldman and Amber are still on the exhibit witness list. Yeah, they just never updated them, but we'll see through some more stuff. Thank you so much. I'm glad you enjoyed it. I hope you got a lot of information from this. Rocky's trial isn't going too well in pre-trial so far. Certainly not going for him well. All right. So anyway, this will be up. I'll try and continue to answer questions when they come in the comments. And I appreciate you all so very much for tuning in. And my goal here is, if this settles and the mainstream media starts pounding on Johnny against him, you've got the facts. You've got this. You've seen this. And you can counter with, no, Rocky has no case here. Rocky has no case. Thank you all. Thank you very much. I'm going to go now and enjoy the rest of your day.